5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You like that? Starting. All right, hey everybody, this is Kyle. This is the Making Moves podcast. With me I have Richard Ludy. He is a fellow alcoholic and a current counselor over here in Memphis, substance abuse counselor. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. Thank you for coming. I hope it's okay if we discuss AA and everything, how we know each other there.
That's right. Yeah.
So you were at one of my AA meetings I went to, and you were there, and I didn't realize it was my first time seeing you, so I didn't understand exactly how precise you'd be. But when you were articulating the message of the day or what we were supposed to be talking about, you were very good at explaining it in a very holistic sense that would make sense to a lot of people. And I come to find out that you're a counselor.
Yes.
And so
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and so that's what I realized I want to talk to you about it, because I've been dealing with my recovery of alcoholism for about 6 months now, and I've been dealing with the disease itself for a little bit longer, as far as it impacting my life. And so I've read about it, and I've read a lot about it. I've heard a lot of stories, and then I'm trying to piece it all together to where I can understand it fully. And so understanding that it's a disease, understanding that it is has hereditary aspects to it, and it has environmental aspects to it. It helps me put it all together. And so especially during this time, during the quarantine, like during year 2020 overall, with how much stress has been going on, I noticed a lot of people, everybody's drinking more.
Right.
And some people aren't going to be able to distinguish if they have a problem or not, because everybody's doing it. And so for some people, it's taking a toll on them, while others are able to kind of get back to whatever the new normal is. But I noticed that with me, it was during the quarantine that I realized I got to take action on this. So what's your story as far as you discovering you coming to realization of being an alcoholic?
Well, I certainly will tell you, but I like the way that you express that. You understand that it's a disease, because it certainly is a disease.
Yes, sir.
It is a mental disease, which a lot of people aren't comfortable with saying, hey, I have a mental disease. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter, it is. It's recognized by the American Medical Association as a disease, and the Academy of Psychiatric. So that's been established. And you also mentioned, possibly hereditary. This is a disease that they found to be hereditary. But it's one of those things, like a lot of things that are hereditary. Just because your parents have it, or follow one parent, doesn't mean that you will be an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. But certainly we found that it does run in families. There's some of an environmental aspect to it also, we're finding. But my feeling is it doesn't matter why I am an alcoholic. It's just accepting the fact that I am. Mm-hmm. And then another key word is this disease. Certainly, when I break the word disease down, it's dis-ease. A lot of times a lot of words that you put the word, you start with dis, it means it's actually opposite of what the word is. Mm-hmm. So disability, well, that means that it's lacking some sort of ability. Mm-hmm. Is ease. People with the disease are not at ease. So I'm certainly, for folks that are considering, am I an alcoholic, am I not, the whole idea of, well, are you at ease? And if you're not, you may have this disease. Mm-hmm. It took me a long time to actually realize this. Throughout my life, I did not know that my father was an alcoholic. My father was a PhD. Very well known. He's traveled worldwide because of his profession.
What was his PhD in?
He was a PhD in biology, and had a couple other degrees along with it.
Oh, wow.
He was a known microbiologist, and some of his work applied all over the world, and he literally traveled the world. My mother had her master's degree, so I came from very well-schooled parents. We moved around a lot, but every house from when I was a little kid on up had a swimming pool in it. We had nice neighborhoods, had a very, very, basically upward, mobile, everything's great life.
Mm-hmm.
So I certainly could not attribute my alcoholism, my disease, to environment.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it doesn't matter why. It's just when I finally decided that I did have the disease of alcoholism, everything went well for me. Good schools, got to college, a private college, full scholarship, got a degree in chemical engineering, got out of school, married a woman that was more beautiful than anyone thought I would ever marry, and which was fantastic. Immediately got a good job, nice paying, and for years and years, outwardly, everything was going fine. But through the whole time was my use and abuse of alcohol.
How old were you when you came to terms?
When I came to terms to alcohol, that was alcoholic, I was 54 years old.
Ooh, 54.
It took me to 54.
And so let's just suppose you were drinking heavy since you were 21. That's 33 years?
That's one of the hideous things about alcoholism. It's a lot easier for other people to look and say, that person really may be an alcoholic. And,
yeah.
But actually, that's part of the disease.
Mm-hmm.
Because understand, it is a mental disease.
Mm-hmm.
It has a physical aspect, certainly. When our bodies, in fact, alcohol and benzoids are the only two substances that you can die from withdrawals.
Yeah, I've been hearing about benzoids as well.
You can overdose on so many different things, unfortunately, but alcohol and benzoids are the only two things that you can actually die from the detox, from the withdrawals.
And benzos has a 9-month detox or something of that nature,
they
right?
are very, yes.
Yeah, like you stop it and then your body's in dysregulation for 9 months.
Exactly.
Crucially,
it is
excruciating.
But I tell you what, I didn't really, because it just became a part of my lifestyle. I drank. My wife drank. Alcohol was always present, and for years, it did not. Really, I did not suffer many consequences, but many of these diseases, no matter what the substance, they're certainly progressive.
Mm-hmm.
So I drank more and more and more over time without really realizing that was going on. I was in a culture because I made sure I surrounded myself with people that, were similar to me.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went off to do just leisure activities, golfing is a good one. When I'd go play golf, I always tried to get what I considered the John Daly level of intoxication.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had heard John Daly won the European Masters when he was drunk. And I knew there was that level that if I was there,
yeah,
I was in the groove.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine, at least I think I did, but I would be able to function better.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, that passes. A lot of things that alcohol, I'll say the word gave me, over time, it start taking away. But as a lot of alcoholics do, I would associate and surround myself with people that drank like me.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, I had a wife that was also one of us, and that was perfect. But then my friends, coworkers, that's what I sought out, so I didn't feel I'm out of sorts. And actually, I felt at ease, even though I had the disease of alcoholism. A lot of people talk about what they lost due to their disease.
Mm-hmm.
Families, marriages, children, custody of children, jobs. I consider that I gave all those things away. I didn't lose anything. That's a nature of this disease.
You, what do you mean you gave it away? I mean, I understand the losing, but when you say you gave it away, you talking about you voluntarily did? Like you just your disease took a hold of you to where you cared about that more, to where you gave everything else away?
I would say that the person I married was still there when we divorced. I gave that marriage away.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The way that I would act, my behavior,
right,
and what I did
mm-hmm.
caused that marriage to go away. I just didn't decide one day, I just don't want to be married anymore.
Right.
It was my actions. My job, I would associate myself with other people that drank. In fact, my boss, and I was director of a very large company, a director. I worked directly for the president. Well, it was the president that also introduced me to cocaine. So I was in one of those situations where I say, boy, I can't beat it. I love to drink.
Mm-hmm.
I was with people that drank.
Mm-hmm.
My boss turned me on to cocaine. Hey, I got a cool boss. See, I think I'm at the top of the world at this time.
Yeah.
But this is a progressive disease,
mm-hmm.
both mentally and physically.
Well, yeah, and I noticed my entire, so everybody I was socialized with, my entire group, my network would always be around alcohol. In high school, I was played football. We have parties. Right. College, fraternity, and then after college, joined the military. That's all alcohol-centered culture.
That is very common.
Yeah, and so. And then on reflection, I started realizing I didn't have that many friends that didn't drink, and they were doing stuff that I thought was fun, that would have been fun, but I just didn't want to do it. You take people who do the more cool, like adventurous stuff that doesn't involve drinking. I wouldn't do that, and I thought it was cool, but I just never did it because it was just an instinct of mine to be around alcohol. So
and that's part of it, because our drinking will keep us from doing things. Yes, I mentioned golf. Yeah, I could play golf drunk to a point.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of other activities, of course, that I missed out on, but I didn't think I was missing anything.
Mm-hmm.
I did not think anything was wrong. I'd return from work, stop at the liquor store, buy a handle, and I thought that was my daily routine. I didn't think about drinking. I just drank.
Yeah.
I had to sometimes rearrange where I was. And, with alcohol, as many substances, the intake does increase over time.
Mm-hmm.
It took more to get that same feeling that I had earlier with less.
And when you say you gave it away now, it's making more sense to me, because if you were, with you being 53, you lived your life, and alcohol was just part of it. It wasn't a factor that you were always thinking about. It was just part of it. And then, so for me, I'm 25, and having come to terms with this, I'm going, oh shit. The rest of my life could be with it being part of it, but now that I realize I have a problem, it's got to be something that I think about, that there's a cognitive, like I'm not able to touch that.
Well, that, and I'm certainly hoping, and what I'm seeing is that you are addressing your disease,
mm-hmm.
but there's certainly, let's say you don't,
mm-hmm.
and as time goes on, the amount increases. Obviously, you like to do podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be a time where you're not going to be able to do podcasts.
Right. Well, I've tried.
The alcohol will come first.
Yeah.
And, this also is any other drug of choice. There was, certainly they thinking initially the drugs or the alcohol was fun, but it becomes not fun.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about my phone there.
You're good.
It just happens.
It's no worries.
So when I say I gave it away, at any time, I had the chance to make the realization that this is adversely affecting me. But see, that's the trouble with this mental disease, is that it inhibited me to realize what was going on. So when I would show up to work shaking,
mm-hmm.
I had a way to remedy that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd take a shot of vodka.
Mm-hmm.
It would be common for me to have Visine. You see, I found ways to cope with these side effects, with these consequences.
Yeah, I noticed the shakes when I did not have when I still said it wasn't a problem, when I considered it like I could have had like when I was just doing it, when I was starting out, just doing it every night. And then I noticed that, I was working at an office, and I noticed that my hand would shake, and I thought that was weird. And then I just kind of adapted to it. and without taking that as a seriousness of what that might be if I don't stop.
People that drink alcohol who are not alcoholics do not routinely wake up in the morning with their hands shaking.
Yeah.
But you see, that was there right in front of me, but I did not realize that.
Mm-hmm.
As time went on, after I gave away the job, because it got to the point where my behavior, the lying, making excuses, physical problems, made it very much aware to my employer. And they did fire my boss about a year before they fired me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they did. And he died of cirrhosis about 2 years later.
Really? Wow.
Yes, he did. But what happened is, when that happened, I was still like, how could this be happening to me? Look who I am. I'm a director. I know all this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a chemical engineer. I've excelled, because alcoholics, at times will excel.
Yeah, you were saying you had a very well paying job at a thing that and you had a college degree in chemical engineering. You were doing everything was going right for you, except for the alcohol, but you were not able to bring that into sight and have it all kind of correlate to the understanding of being an alcoholic.
And that's true for me, and it's true for many, I would say almost most alcoholics. But we don't realize, even things are falling apart around us, like the building is falling apart around us, but we think everything is fine.
Yeah, it took me so long to come to terms with it, because with just the stigma around it and the stereotypes, it seems like you think you've done something wrong. But when I hear people, say that they woke up in the hospital, the doctor said you're an alcoholic and it's not your fault, but your recovery is your responsibility. It brings to light those things that didn't make sense, because I felt like I was just losing. I just didn't have the willpower, and all those common things. I didn't have the willpower. I wasn't disciplined enough. I didn't have my priorities straight, and I thought I could just control the drinking. And then, as especially once you get to a certain point, once you have one drink, the only thing you know is you want another one.
And I also kind of relate it to other mental health diseases. There is clinical depression.
Mm-hmm.
So you see someone with clinical depression, and they're obviously depressed. You can see the way that their body language, the way they talk.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you walk up to them and say, well, look, cheer up. Hey, watch this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good movie. Nothing you can say or nothing they can do will cheer them up.
Right.
Now, and same thing with, let's say, bipolar. That's where you get the really manic highs and the really depressed lows.
Mm-hmm.
You can say, hey, chill.
Yeah.
Settle down.
Yeah.
But the disease is it's mental disease. It is a disease of the mind. How we feel, what we do, how we react, that all comes from our brain.
And alcoholism is the only disease that tells you you're not sick.
That's part of what they do. Is you're in, and they commonly call it in denial.
Yeah.
But you see, with these other mental diseases, there's pills to take.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not so with alcohol, alcoholism, and other drug addictions.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that just in a little bit. But after I gave that job away, I had lost my marriage. Things had happened with my children. I had visitation saying that I want to be a good father. Things happened while my children were visiting, staying over at my house, that should never have happened. So I lost the right. I gave away the right of even seeing my children. I still had my job, but then I gave the job away. So I literally, in my early 50s, everything has just fallen apart,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't associate it with my drinking. As I sat at home thinking all kinds of ways that it was a good thing I was drunk, because the person that fired me, I had all kinds of ways that I wanted to kill this person.
Mm-hmm.
I had the plan and I had the means.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I was too drunk to do it. But you hear, even then, I'm not looking at me. It's always someone else's fault.
Mm.
Well, it progressed to the point where my physical health had deteriorated, and I was drinking over, I call it a handle, basically a half gallon a day and more. And there came a time where I could not get it. I had nice little tricks at first where I could, if I could get in my car, driving was easier than walking. And I actually had one liquor store that would carry it out to me because I told them I injured my leg. But then they stopped. So when it got physically not able to get alcohol after drinking the amount that I drink daily, I went into my first detox. About 8% of alcoholics that go into detox will die. And
Really? Even a medically supervised one?
Well, no, medically supervised is different.
Okay. But if somebody just tries to quit cold turkey, 8%?
8%. In the United States, there is 85,000 deaths from alcohol detox.
Wow.
We talked about alcohol and benzoids being that you can die of the detox. I was blessed myself being in that 8%, that if I did not get, and I'm not talking about the treatment center type help, I'm talking full hospital, IV, the works.
Did you end up in a hospital voluntarily?
Well, that's part of my. That's actually part of my whole realization, and why I got more involved in this. The first time that this happened to me, I called 911. They came to my house, brought me to the hospital, detoxed in the hospital, was there multiple weeks, and of course they told me when I left, you have to control your drinking. Well, I did not think they were right. I knew better. I went back to the drinking, and I went always back to, didn't go back and, back to the smaller levels. I always went back to what I was drinking or more. So a second time, I go into the alcohol detox. Grand mal seizures, hallucinations.
You had that?
Oh, yeah.
Jeez.
Oh, yeah. And I called again, and I called 911. They picked me up, took me to the hospital. They're warning me again what's going on. You would think that a guy that had my background, that had somewhat mental ability, would be smart enough to realize what's happening. When I'm in full-fledged alcohol disease, we don't do that. A third time it happens. During that third time I'm in the hospital, my brother comes in and starts asking me some really silly questions like, do you have a will? What do you want your kids to have? How would you like to be buried? My mother had known what was going on, and she basically was at the point that she just knew I was going to die. Because after 3 times me not doing anything, I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
And so I get out of the hospital that third time, I go into the fourth. I could not get my phone. My phone was as close as you and me together. I could physically not get my phone because of the seizures. A person that I hadn't seen in years, that knew my situation, they had asked me, that's another thing I gave away, is all my friends. He just happened to be in the neighborhood and decided to stop in and see how I was doing. Had no thought that morning of coming over to see me. He just happened to be by. He finds me on the floor in my seizures. He calls 911 because I could not physically get to my phone. I go into the hospital again. All the nurses know me. They just unbelievable. They can't believe that I cannot understand what's going on. I left that fourth time, bought a bottle. The house smelled so bad because it gets to a point where you don't take the necessities of just going to the bathroom and stuff like that. Or cleaning the house, nothing. So I had to go outside, and I opened that bottle. After the fourth time, I went into the death detox, and something happened. Before I put it to my lips, a thought came, oh my God. I poured it out. At that point, finally, because at that point I was not drunk and I was not into seizures. I had that opportunity at that time to make a decision. So I did call and found a place to go. I had already given away all my money. I was a person that was making $150,000 a year, had a great doctor, yeah. By that time, I'm living on food stamps and had no money, no insurance. So I found a place that took people without insurance. Went through that program. It was a 28-day program, and it was decent. It was a nice program. And I swear, though, I was not going to go to AA, which is part of the solution I hope we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
That first day I got home, I had nothing in the refrigerator. So I thought, this logical thing, I'll go to Kroger's. I get in my car. Hadn't been out of the rehab for 2 hours. Go over in my car, go across a 6-lane street outside my neighborhood on my way to Kroger's. I had turned immediately left into the liquor store.
Mm-hmm.
No intention at all when I left my house to go to the liquor store.
Yeah, you were not. Somehow you were not in charge of your actions,
and that's even after 30 days of not drinking.
That's how powerful that disease is.
Well, it is again, we talk about mental disease, and it has a lot to do with your cognitive, thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
We train our brain to do most everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went across that street, I had turned left so many times that automatically, even without thinking about it, I turned left into the liquor store. Well, after that happened, of course, I turned around, thank God, and went to Kroger's. I got back.
Oh, you did?
I was so afraid.
Okay.
I was so afraid after that happened that when I told my counselor, I said I wasn't going to go to AA or the aftercare.
Mm-hmm.
I immediately scrambled and found an AA place near me. And I walked in those stores for the first time, first AA meeting I went to. It's been 8 years now. And my life is so changed over this past 8 years.
Good. How long have you been a counselor for?
That would be 4 years.
4 years now?
After I got into AA, had some sober time,
mm-hmm.
I started looking for a job. I found a super job in the field that I used to work in. I did a fantastic interview with 5 people. They were going to open a regional office here in Memphis, and I was going to be the guy. Well, one of the people that interviewed me happened to ask, well, do you know so-and-so? And I said, yeah, I know her, because I had worked for her. She had seen me near my worst when I got fired from my job, when I gave my job away.
Mm.
So all of a sudden, this great job went away because they weren't going to hire somebody with, with what he knew.
Mm-hmm.
A ex-cop, Memphis police officer, ex being the key word, he's one of us, and was asked to give his job away at the Memphis Police Department, just happened to suggest, well, you're not doing anything. Ever considered social work? Which was the furthest thing away from my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But because of that suggestion, and I was like, what the hell? I don't have anything else to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
I got into a social work program, 2 years of study, interning, and all that. And then all of a sudden, I'm a social worker. I proceeded to do more education and got a license. So became a licensed social worker. And then went out and looked for a job, and then found it in mental health, that specifically drug and alcohol rehab.
Good. And so you've been doing that for a few years now, and that is, and I imagine a big part of that is that step 12 of being able to help other alcoholics. Like you're able to combine your career with your personal life in a way.
Not everyone is so blessed, but certainly I am.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the recovery, and that's why I like the 12 steps so much.
Mm-hmm. So let's.
Go ahead.
Oh well, let's discuss AA, because I have the big book right here, and I carry it everywhere I go now, but a few years ago, I bought it secretly because I knew I thought I might have had a problem and all this stuff. And I went to a used bookstore and I got it. It kind of freaked me out that it didn't freak me out, but I could, it's like an anonymous looking book. It's just a blue book and you can barely see the title.
Right.
And so it seemed like it was a shameful thing and all this. And so it wasn't until I like was in an atmosphere where it was people who were admitted alcoholics, and you could see that there was no shame, and they're discussing this, that it was that I could tell there's a big program with it, and it's not a shameful thing at all. It's a spiritual program, which if people feel guilt, it seems like anybody could do it to enhance their spiritual life if they don't have one. But it's tailored towards alcoholics because because that is the thing you switch your artificial spirit of the alcohol for. And my favorite book is called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. It's
Right.
you've read that book? Have you heard of it?
I'm familiar with the book, and the title is very much, to the point of, this disease that we have.
Yeah, and in that book, it talks about, how if there's a habit, like if you want to quit smoking, then you have to replace that. You have to replace that habit with something else, and in order to keep it, because your body, it's become ingrained in your, in your actual existence, to the point where if you're smoking, then you need to find something that can take the place of. You can't just abstain. It's not just abstain from smoking. Do everything you can to abstain. It's about finding a way to where you can have that routine still, possibly, and have and be able to continue. So like eating potato chips or doing things like that. That's what they do. And so I thought and that was my first book that I really read that got me back into reading and knowledge. And that's the book that made me want to get a bachelor's in psychology, because I learned that there's a lot more to habits and things deeper than just what we, there's things that pull us in different ways.
Well, one of the things that, I've been blessed to find out is that the 12 steps, again, that addiction is a mental disease,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's cigarettes, sex, alcohol, other drugs. These 12 steps are actually what I consider cognitive therapy.
Really?
When you hear the word cognitive, that typically relates to the mind or thinking.
Right. And the actual and putting thoughts together.
Putting the thoughts together.
Mm-hmm.
Like when the example that I turned again to the liquor store, but see, I had trained my brain to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The 12 steps help train our brains so we act and react differently.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in perfect order. Because actually looking at the 12 steps, the first step is that, we admitted that we're powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Every one of the 12 steps has a spiritual and cognitive axiom, and that very first thing is honesty.
Mm-hmm. The first step one is honesty.
That step one is honesty. So we have to be honest about this, because even though the evidence all around us would say this, if we are at a point where we can be honestly, I cannot control my use.
And and the problem, that's the hard step, because even an alcoholic, we're used to being able to do things, we could follow a step routine if it was just do this. But when it comes to honesty and the amount of time you've probably, that alcoholics have spent in denial, it's a weird thing to be completely honest. To where that step, you don't even know how to approach that first step unless you are in such a vulnerable emotional place that you are able to grasp the idea that you've been in denial about something for so long, and that that you would rather take a different path to fix it.
That's right, because our disease tells us that we do not have a disease.
Right.
Our way of thinking is we do not have a disease.
So you have to look at the objective. Like I had to look at the objective in my life and go, nothing's going right for me. I mean, I have excuses and reasonings and everything, but just the fact of the matter is my life went completely off track. And so you had to look at it like, what did I give away, like you were saying, or what did I lose? And because emotionally, you're beating yourself up into where you're just trying to make sure you're okay. And so to be able to get that burden off your shoulder, to be honest and to admit that you're powerless over alcohol is one of the most freeing times, because you're able to understand that there is a way out.
It is extremely freeing. And to do that also, for many of us, not only that we have to be honest about it, that we do have a problem, we have to basically lay down our pride.
Yeah.
Because that
pride and ego.
We can have, we can admit that we have a problem, but our pride tells us that we can fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I know I drink too much. I might be an alcoholic, but my pride is telling me, oh, I can take care of it myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually truly have to. At one of the facilities I worked at, one of the psychiatrists there gave me something that I've used quite a bit working with other alcoholics, and that's just saying, surrender. Actually, surrender.
Surrender.
Say, we are dropping my pride.
Uh-huh.
I'm being honest, and I'm giving up. I cannot do this myself.
Mm-hmm.
When a person does that, they're well on their road to recovery.
Yeah. And then that once you allow that step to come, you're able to do the rest of the steps, which have to be done in order, by the way, right? So for those, just to give an overview, there's AA meetings. People go to AA meetings, and then there's and that is based off of the 12 steps. So the meetings is a place of fellowship, is a place of coming together with fellow alcoholics to discuss your time, and it's a what would be regarded as a safe space to be vulnerable about what is going on, having a topic for the day, discussing that, how you feel about that, how you are in your sobriety to that day.
The whole 12-step program and the program of recovery, again, of course, alcohol, but this applies to many other mental disorders, drugs, others. But basically, the recovery program is what we call a we program,
Mm-hmm.
written in the steps. If you look at every step, it's in plural. It's in we. Like the very first step, we admitted that we were powerless. It's not I admit that I am powerless. It's we.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly, again, this is a way that we change our way of thinking. We work on the cognitive. There's 3 parts in recovery. First, we have got to stop using, stop drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the physical aspect. We cannot continue to put the substance into us and go down the road of recovery. So that's the physical part. The second part is mental. We've got to change our way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's done through the 12 steps. And that in itself, those 2 things are powerful. But imagine just having a stick that is not, it's the, I'm not using anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's one stick. And then, or one stick, one board. And then you add to it, well, I'm going to change the way I'm thinking. So you put the 2 together, and you got a little V-type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you push down on that point of that V, it's going to flatten out. There's got to be something that holds the physical and the mental together. And we learned that part is spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
It is a spiritual program, not a religious program.
It's a spiritual program. And it's like what I was saying, the artificial spirits, that's what, I don't know if that's, in hindsight, it's ironic that they're called like wine and spirits, because we replaced our natural spiritual life with that artificial one. That's how we were able to just feel present, and we gave and that's what we were addicted to that. And so having to build up that spiritual life on the inside, it's great to be able to have that, and to get you're allowing yourself to be able to have certain emotions back, be able to feel things, and to be present with the moment, and to have a spirit coming out of you that's not just drunken, past and future. It's in the moment.
Many of us find that because people define or their spirituality differently. I won't have the same sense of spirituality as you do, but the basic of it is there is a power greater than myself.
Right.
Now, how you visualize that, how I visualize that, could be different. But in recovery, it is necessary to develop a concept, a belief that there is something greater than ourselves.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with religion. And religion and spirituality can coexist. But as long as we just know there's something greater than us, that's what holds us together.
And so that's what you being able to find anything that's, speakers would come say, even if it's the doorknob, just anything that'll a power greater than yourself, and that's where the intellectual, you have to get rid of the intellectual part as far as only believing intellectual arguments of theology and all that, but to be able to understand that there is that there I don't know if there's a God, but I'm not him, or I know there's a God and I'm not him, that kind of thing.
And that is the road to spirituality.
Right. And just surrendering and understanding that there's more to this universe than you.
That we cannot understand.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, that's a key. It's because, and the 12 steps bring you to that. I'm not worried when somebody says, well, Richard, I'm not religious or spiritual, so I won't get this program. I don't care where you start. Start at step 1 of the 12 steps.
Mm-hmm.
It has been clinically shown that the 12-step program is the most effective way to address addiction. There's been studies. AA and the 12-step program is worldwide. People tend to focus on people that have relapsed or that are still in their active addiction. There are millions and millions and millions of people in this world that are in recovery
mm-hmm.
because they used and stay in the 12-step program. It builds. I mean, first step is honesty. Second step is hope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I honestly have a problem. But the 12-step program teaches us, okay, there's hope. After hope, it asks you to have a little bit of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And then after you get some faith, you're going to have a sense of courage. You know why old sayings are old sayings? Because they're true.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the old sayings is, all men of faith have courage. So to get some courage, the sixth step, you learn about integrity. Sixth step, you are then developing some true willingness. Seventh step, humility. Eighth step is brotherly love. Ninth step is justice. 10th step is perseverance. 11th step is spirituality. And the 12th step is service. Think of all those words. Integrity, honesty, willingness, brotherly love, justice. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you like a person that has those qualities?
Absolutely.
And that's what working the 12-step program does.
And and the weird part is that, like, all you have to do is follow the steps. Once you get your pride, you can get rid of your pride and just do the steps, then it gets easier and it makes more sense, and you're able to keep going.
When you're allowing another person that has done these steps, and we call that, I think, as you know, a sponsor.
Yes.
When you get a sponsor that helps you go through these steps, because this is something that we just cannot do by ourselves. We just can't open a book, see the list.
Mm-hmm.
It's done with others, a
mm-hmm.
sponsor. When you start surrounding yourself with other people that are addressing the same issue, that's why we go to meetings.
Mm-hmm.
We're surrounding ourselves with other people. That's why it's a weed program. There's the old example that a herd of animals, the animals herd for a reason, because for the predators coming up to that herd, the herd overwhelms them.
Mm-hmm.
But that one calf or one animal that strays from the herd, what do we call those? Dinner. So
yeah.
if I'm together in the brotherhood,
mm-hmm.
if I'm surrounding myself with other people that are in recovery, when I have problems, when there's a predator out there to get me, I stay in the herd. I can talk about what's bothering me.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk about my problems, and there's solutions. Spirituality we haven't spoken to a lot. It is something that, following the steps and just being open, people will form their own sense of spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
I personally believe that my higher power works through people, and a lot of us believe that because we've seen that. You need a job to pay the rent. somebody in your group knows about a job. He tells you about it, you get the job.
Mm-hmm.
You need help with this problem. You express that. Another guy tells you, hey, I just went through this. This is what worked for me. You may want to try it. I can give so many examples where people have, my higher power has worked through people that has benefited and made my life so much better. Just like the guy that suggested that I go to social work at my degree.
Mm-hmm.
That led me to a job and a life that I love.
Mm-hmm.
But a person came to me and said, Richard, why don't you try this? I believe that was my higher power working through others for my benefit. And I had to be open to receive that.
And that in doing that, I mean, once you understand how it works, you just keep going and it builds momentum and understanding, because you have to fight off the disease. We were in a meeting the other day. We were talking about the story about the guy who had 20 years or whatever, and he relapsed on mouthwash. And his cognitive thinking wouldn't allow him to go to a liquor store. He had trained himself to where going to a liquor store he would not do that, you know. But the disease is so sneaky that just the idea of, he did mouthwash at the gym, and then the next week he ends up he heard about a time. He remembered a time that he heard somebody say, "Oh, just take a shot of mouthwash, and that takes care of it." Like, that takes care of your urge. And so he just did that, and then it went on. And next thing he knows, he's buying dollar store mouthwash, bottles of it, as if it was vodka. And he comes up and it was so embarrassing for him because he did everything right, but that disease was cunning, and he hadn't done his spiritual work. He admitted, and so that it was so cunning that it came around and caught him on a way he did not expect.
The alcohol, even the little bit of alcohol in the mouthwash, mm-hmm. had a physical effect on him.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying. To address this disease, that triangle: physical, mental, spiritual.
Yeah.
He broke the physical. The physical then started to affect the mental part.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's okay because it's just mouthwash. You know, it's not like I'm drinking, straight vodka.
Yeah.
But you see, that then becomes back into the disease thinking.
And people who haven't been there don't understand, or people who are not alcoholics don't understand how that could happen because it's not logical. But people who are alcoholics and go, it came around, that disease came around one way or another.
Right. And when you get to know, to us, it is very logical. And
Mm-hmm.
I can see that. And if you do talk to mental health professionals, they will tell you that, no, that is very logical.
Yeah.
It's hard to understand.
Understanding the disease, you understand it's logical, but for somebody just...
Exactly.
Right.
Well, how could that hurt you?
Right.
But it does. And what, in my true enjoyment and my blessing of being in a strong recovery group, where I'm there with, my AA brothers and sisters, I have seen people relapse. As a counselor and therapist in drug and alcohol programs, I have seen patients relapse. I don't mean to be cruel, because actually I'm very sincere about it. When I talk to someone that relapse, I tell them, thank you for the research. And
yeah.
I'm like, thank you for the research. Because I ask them, what went on when you relapse? Every single time the response, it's not exactly the same, but it basically is, I stopped doing something that was working.
Mm-hmm. I stopped doing my daily reflection. I stopped going to meeting. I stopped calling my sponsor.
Exactly.
I stopped keeping up with even something as small as keeping up with your hygiene can lead you down a path to where you're not taking, because you go, whatever, I'm just not going to worry about something, and then next thing you know, you're not worrying about your sobriety.
That's exactly right. They stopped doing something that's working. And the good news is, we, of course, as the program, we do not shoot our wounded. Back 1,000 years ago, when armies would march across the continent to go invade another country. If a soldier got hurt, they just leave him there. They just kill him and move on, because they didn't want to carry him all that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we don't do that. When somebody relapses, we welcome them back in.
Well, the more time you spend around, I had a relapse I've been to treatment. I went to a detox, and then I went to treatment after that because I had a relapse, and I was so happy to see the people that I had known from before. They were just happy to see me. They were happy to know that I got help, because you never know if you don't see them coming to meetings continuously, then you don't know what they're doing, and that's where that worry comes in from other people. And so they were just happy to see me, that I made it to treatment, and so now and it made me understand like what the seriousness of this is,
Right.
and how important it is to do your steps, or to do those things that keep you sober.
People certainly can learn from
Yeah.
their relapse, and not only are we're when I see somebody coming back, I'm not just glad for them, I'm glad for me,
Yeah.
because every time somebody comes back into the group, that's one more person that I'm connected with,
Mm-hmm.
one more person that I may be able to help them, but they're still there that maybe they can help me.
So I want to just to lay out the course of treatment for alcoholism. If somebody is starting to think that they have a problem, the first thing that they need to think about, and they're thinking about and they're thinking about getting sober, the first thing that they would have to overcome is the detox itself.
That's the first thing, is make sure that there is no serious or threatening physical issues.
And so that comes with, and I'm sure that comes with a different drinking habit and pattern out of all these different types of people. But is there a certain number of when it's realized that they might have a serious physical impact on the detox? Is there a certain number of drinks or certain pattern?
Oh no, it's not, because it varies, for everybody. I mean, any given amount of alcohol for me may affect me different from you.
Mm-hmm.
There's no set. The thing is, it's if you had been drinking, you stopped drinking for whatever reason, and you are feeling physical effects, confusion, shakiness, sweats, that's basically detox. Depending on how serious it is, I mean, if a person, like in my case, was having full grand mal seizures, where I'm actually shaking so bad it's incredible, I'm on the floor, I'm hallucinating, of course, that takes hospitalization.
Mm-hmm.
If it is more just the sweats and some trembling, then most, I'd say all, if you do go to a rehab facility, they can assist you in getting through the detox stage.
Okay.
And that's quite common. Some have specific units. That's the detox unit.
Mm-hmm.
But you get through the detox, and then if you're in a recovery facility mode, then depending on where you go, they have different programs. There's a lot of 28-day programs. Personally, which I'm not knocking. I'm in favor of 3 months or more, because it's obvious. You think more time, the better chance of success.
With that, most people, because I'm aiming this, I'm trying to keep in mind the person that doesn't understand the problem yet. And so when you do say, or when anybody says, you need to go to the hospital, you need to go to a rehab facility, you need to go for 28 days or 3 months, that throws off. It is so hard to grasp, because they don't understand the long term risk of their problem, that it takes a lot to realize. And so so you do the treatment, and it really takes pushing your pride aside to take that time, because if you've always just kind of had that idea like, I'm gonna roll with it, I'm good,
Exactly.
that then you're not going to allow yourself to have the time to get better, because in the bottom of your heart that you're not the fully present person that you want to be. But it takes a lot of pride to say, I'm going to go away and focus on me for a minute, because I do recognize I have a problem.
And that is so true, and like my personal example, because it was deadly serious. I had no plans to go to AA after I got on my 28-day treatment plan program, but basically I was scared to death after that first day that I did seek that.
Mm-hmm.
If I had not gotten into a 12-step program, I probably wouldn't be here speaking to you today. A pretty good
Yeah.
chance.
Yeah.
And again, and going through the program with the sponsor and with other people, that is basically cognitive therapy, where you're picking up all the qualities that I spoke about: the honesty, the hope, the faith, the courage, to maintain a sober lifestyle.
And that back to what you were saying. You got out of that treatment facility. You personally got out of the facility and then accidentally went to the liquor store just because it was so programmed in you.
Exactly.
So once you get out of that treatment, it's so important to get to that AA group to where you can have that heard, to where that part of you doesn't take over you,
and
to be able to.
Exactly. It's doing what works. One of the first patients I had when I got my first job in a facility that dealt with drug and alcohol, I'm doing an intake assessment on him, and when I got to the point of education, he said PhD, and in my brain I'm thinking, oh wow, man, I've got a master's degree, but this dude's got a PhD, wow, and I progressed to asking him, well, what type of job did he have? And he said, well, I was a director at a rehab facility. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, here's a person that had been in recovery. He got a PhD. He was a psychiatrist, head of a rehab facility.
Oh my gosh!
Looking at him coming into in front of me.
Yeah.
He was at, quote unquote, as far gone as I was when I entered my first.
Jeez.
And I asked him again, what happened? And he said, well, I stopped going to meetings. My whole life was running a rehab facility. I stopped taking care of myself because I thought I had it. And
that when you hear that story, I hate to hear it. And if you're not educated on alcoholism, then it looks like it's all his fault. Like he met, like it's a tragedy. And it's only after understanding that if you were to put alcoholism in the same disease category as a physical disease, such as diabetes, a diabetes doctor who gets diabetes, or if there is somebody who a cancer doctor that gets cancer, you wouldn't blame them for that because it's a scientific phenomenon. It's a medical disease.
It certainly is, and you imply you use diabetes as an example. I'll say use depression as an example.
Yeah.
Okay, or schizophrenia.
Yeah, I was trying to think of ones that do.
If you are taking your medication, your episodes of depression will be few or far between if you're on the right medication. If you're taking medications for schizophrenia, you're not going to have those manic highs, manic lows.
Yeah.
But again, remember, we don't have a pill for addiction.
Right. There is no pill. So the only pill that works is the 12 steps.
Is staying in
the program.
Steps and in the program.
And so, I was wanting to pull this back just to the timeline of things. You go, you get your treatment, you're medically okay, you do your detox, you go do your treatment, which could be, like for me, it was group therapy. I went to an outpatient.
Outpatient is very, it's very beneficial.
And so you're doing group therapy, and I had to convince myself that it was okay to do that because in my head, I'm like, I have a degree in this. I've read, I've done studies on literature of this. Like I should get the point is what I was telling myself. It's like I should understand it, like what I should be doing, but I didn't allow myself the time to actually go through it for my personal self. Like you all have.
There's a big difference between reading about it, talking about it, and doing it.
Right. And so that's what I was like, I know it, but actually executing it took more time for me to be vulnerable with myself and to be comfortable with myself and honest, to be able to say, okay, what is the likelihood that I can do this? To accept the fact that there are some situations, people, places, things I'll never be able to be around again. And so you go through that, you do the outpatient, and then you can start going, or you do however long the treatment is necessary,
right.
And then you start going to AA, at which point you start going to meetings. They say just bring the mind or bring the body, the mind will come. So you should start going, even if you don't understand everything that's going on. And then you get a sponsor. And then with that sponsor, that is your personal mentor and your personal, person person that you're on the same wavelength with as far as
It's
your
a
disease.
person that will help you take the steps.
Right. And you do the steps with them, and you are completely honest with them. And that, which is it, the 8th step or the 9th step about admitting?
Are you talking about admitting or making amends, or it's
And so is it? Yeah, both of them.
yeah. It's the first step, admitting that I have a problem, admitting that I'm powerless.
Right. But I mean, it gets all the way down to admitting to someone your, the exact evil of your wrongs, and then
Exactly. Yes, we're talking the fifth step.
that was 5th step.
Where you sit down after you take an inventory on the 4th step.
Mm-hmm.
What has my life been like? Where have I been selfish? Where have I been hurtful? What are my fears?
Mm-hmm.
And find out what my fears are, and then you sit down and directly express that, and we say both to a person and to your higher power.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you may or may not have a developed sense of higher power. We use the word God, but depending on, again, it's a spiritual, not a religious program.
Right.
I'll say God or higher power. To me,
It gets interchanged to the point where it's not as uncomfortable for people
Exactly.
once you're in the program.
And so you actually, when you just verbalize what inventory you have, where have you been hurtful to others?
Mm-hmm.
Where have you lied? Where have you done things that I think we basically as humans can and know what the right thing to do. And if we don't know what the right thing to do, we certainly a lot of times know what the wrong thing is.
Yeah.
We may not know the right thing.
Yeah. Stop doing things you know that are wrong.
Exactly. I know it's wrong to steal money from you.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's wrong to sleep with a woman that you have a relationship with.
Yeah.
There are things that we just inherently know that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But once we admit that we take that inventory and admit it to have somebody, to another human being and to our higher power, then we can progress to change the way we're thinking. I'm not stealing money from you.
Yeah.
And then there's another step as we go on through the steps where we have the ability to make amends to things that we've done.
And that's direct amends to somebody that you feel resentment, that you feel guilt, that
The people that in some way we have harmed,
yeah.
and make amends as long as it doesn't hurt them or others. And people think, how can I do that? It's so doable. And then once you do that, we get into our 10, 11, 12 steps, which I call the maintenance steps. And because, yes, people that are clean and sober will still make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Some of their old thinking, some of my old thinking will come back. And then I will maybe do something like, brush somebody off because I don't want to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
I may say something unkind to somebody when I'm just tired or something else is going on.
Yeah.
But in the 10, 11, 12 step, I understand that this is a maintenance thing. I will then still make amends to say, look, I really, I was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not worried about them forgiving me. My amends is to recognize that, look, I was wrong. And,
Yeah. You're not looking for forgiveness. You are making amends.
The amends, and then I can go on from that point, not worrying about these things.
Right. Even if they don't forgive you, that is the best case scenario.
Exactly.
But it's about doing that to get it off your chest.
These steps are very powerful.
Yeah. I mean, Bill Wilson said that the only thing you need for an AA is a coffee pot and resentment in a coffee pot, right?
And he'll have something. He'll have some hot coffee to drink and something to talk about.
That's right.
So you got a meeting.
And that's another part of that's the mental health part of alcoholism. When you're active in your addiction, the emotions that you feel and the thoughts that you have, like the resentments, the guilt, the shame, and most of the time you're feeling some kind of way and you don't understand why. Or for me, I might screw somebody over or something, but I might not, and I still hate myself. And it's just so much self-hatred to spirituality because you have turned away against God or your higher power, whatever. And so you're sitting alone with your thoughts, and then you just absolutely can't. You just can't stand the side of yourself because you just lost yourself. And that's what the 12 steps allow you to reintegrate to is knowing yourself in regards to your higher power.
A good hint is if at the end of the day, and when you're going to bed, if you're laying in bed and you're not falling asleep, you're ruminating about something. Ruminating is like thinking about it over and over.
Yeah.
There's probably an amends that you need to make. Something happened during that day, or you had some thoughts that weren't healthy for you. And I find that's one of the many benefits of staying clean and sober is falling to sleep at night.
Yeah.
It's so simple. It doesn't sound like a big thing, but it is a big thing.
And it's so great to wake up and not come to.
Yeah.
That's so great. And I heard a joke about waking up every day hungover when I was a kid. I heard a joke about it from from a family member or something. I overheard one. And I was like, oh, that's, what if, I didn't understand it. I just couldn't contemplate waking up hungover every day. Even when I was partying, I didn't. It wasn't until I started doing it, I was like, oh, man, this is odd. And then now you can wake up with the full day ahead of you instead of still getting guilt-ridden on the resentments of yesterday.
Both mentally, the guilt,
yes,
and physically. Maybe the shakes or the blurry eyes or feeling bad, yeah.
Now, how's it been since 2020, with everything happening this year, especially with quarantine and everything going on? How have you seen people's mental health, and especially alcoholics and addicts? What has there been a rise, an uptick in treatment that you've seen?
Well,
people coming in at
in
least?
my particular facility, we're full, just about full, but I don't directly attribute that, to the Corvus. It's there were we had plenty of people seeking treatment, and many people needing some treatment, and some seeking treatment. Has happened, with this virus or not. What I've seen, and I think it's just wonderful, because of the virus and the situation, was the advent of Zoom meetings.
You do like that?
Online meetings. I prefer in-person meetings myself. But the patients I deal with right now in my situation, we typically, because we believe the AA program is so vital for recovery, pre-virus, I'll say pre-whatever. I'm so tired of the virus thing. But before this time, part of what we do is we would take them to meetings. So, we're not just, we're putting them with people in recovery and letting them get used to the meetings and to benefit from going to the meetings. Well, because of all the virus concerns and whatnot, we are not allowed to do that. But somebody was inspired by their higher power to invent these Zoom meetings. So we still think it's so important. And the facility I work at, it's a longer term. It's longer than 28 days. But we want people to get used and to see the benefit of AA meetings. So yes, during the evenings, we will have them be on the Zoom meetings, so they can see how people, benefit from the program. They hear what the people are saying, and they'll see people that that person's a lot like me.
Yeah,
and they're doing it, and they wait a minute, they look happy, they look healthy.
Yeah.
They look like they're having fun.
Yeah, and you get that sense of what I want to be like that. What are they doing?
Exactly.
And you start to get that feel.
Yeah.
And I just I do get worried about people's mental health during this. You're you're a different generation than me, so it's
Hey, Dad. I can admit that.
We're very used to being people my age are used to being on technology, but not like forced to, and especially with people my age, we were the ones who were always who were raised on it and the ones figuring it out. And so a lot of the problems with technology and social media, that's we're the ones that are dealing with that the most, because that's what we were grown up. We were trying it out when we were young, and so with all the mental health things going on right now, I wish that people would get the treatment that they need, whether it's for depression or if it is for substance abuse or if it is a domestic thing, family relationship counseling.
Right.
All that's going on. That's becoming so much more important during these times, I think.
Yeah, you mentioned this time that we live in now with the virus days, and with all the things that are not happening, social distancing, this that. See that. to me, that's where the fellowship of recovery becomes even more important.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is something that we are more. I'm sorry, I'm not going to say we're more blessed, but we are blessed compared to somebody that's not in a recovery group. They have to go through all this extra stress that the current conditions, are some things aren't open, people are not working, financial problems for some people, definitely, stressors. These people that may not have their own safety net, their own, their own group, since that's, we're in AA terms, group,
Mm-hmm.
to go to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, many of our meetings, the fact that things have changed or there's different restrictions or rules in place because of this virus, we have people to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
We have other people that share our concerns and share our solutions.
And to see people come in, and it's so good to see when people come in for the first time, and they just allow themselves to be vulnerable enough to go to see what it's about, because we get to be able to be the ones that help, and then that just reinforces the cycle of community going on there.
I love newcomer meetings.
Yeah,
I love it when we have somebody, and I don't know. Basically a newcomer meeting is just, like it says, if it's somebody's first meeting at a 12-step meeting, we ask typically before we start every meeting, is this anyone's first meeting? And if a person raises their hand, one or more people, we'll slightly change the meeting format to kind of give the new people, the newcomers,
mm-hmm.
A little taste that, look, this is who we are, and this is where we've gotten to.
Yeah.
And if you think you may be one of us, join us.
Yeah, a normal meeting would be just for the listeners. A normal meeting would be everybody meets up at a particular time and it's at the place, and then you have the introduction, remarks, and readings,
Right.
and that is all of the 12 steps, the why we're here,
Right.
and what here's our stories. And so we just go through a few readings, and then there's a topic of the day that whoever's chairing the meeting that day, and they'll introduce a topic from one of the books or some literature, and then everybody, and you can either reflect on that topic, and or you could just talk about how you're feeling today.
That's
but
exactly right.
It's not a discussion. It's a place that you go and you say what you want to say, and nobody comes back and says anything back to you.
It's not a debate.
It's not a debate. It's not a discussion. It's a place of reflection and listening with other people. Some people just come in there to listen. They don't say anything, and they get more value out of that than talking. And then if it's somebody's first meeting and they admit to it, because at the beginning they say, is this anybody's first meeting?
Right.
And then so if somebody says, it's my first meeting, it becomes a first timers meeting where the meeting is focused on them. And so instead of me and you just saying to the rest of the group what's going on, we kind of direct what we're saying and our story to them, and trying to allow them to see that with at least somebody, there's going to be a story
Right.
similar to theirs. Maybe not in time, place, blah, 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 but in structure of the story and emotions, it's the same thing.
Right. So, but give them an idea that there is hope.
Yes.
Because we really, we need to, people, because some people are scared to admit, something got them into the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be that the courts are making them go.
Yeah.
We don't really care why a person shows up. We're going to share our hopes and our strengths and what living in a sober manner has done for us.
Yeah, sharing the story, sharing the hope and the strength and what the program could do to you. And it's so it's so overbearing at first because everybody's saying this program. And you're like, you don't even understand how long the program's going to take. What do you do? But you just, if you just stick around and just kind of hang out, and then a few things will fall into place. You make a few moves, take a few initiatives, and then you're able to start going with the program.
And I think, as you know, the group that I'm associated with, and virtually every group, during a newcomers meeting, we will provide our telephone numbers.
Yes.
That we'll pass around a sheet or a book. That gives us, that we can put our phone numbers if we want to, and then we'll hand that to the newcomer before he leaves, and then they will automatically have some numbers to call if, for whatever reason, maybe they feel like taking a drink, or maybe they just don't understand the 12-step program, or if they have questions or concerns, or just need somebody to talk to. Because sometimes all we need is somebody to talk to. And
Somebody to talk to.
That will listen.
And the only requirement to attend AA meetings is a desire to drink. And so you don't have to have
desire not to drink. Yeah.
That's all. Well, I mean, if you're an alcoholic, you always have a desire to drink. But if you have a desire, well, it's a mental obsession and all that. So a desire to stop that cycle and to stop being an alcoholic, a desire to not drink and to stop drinking. And if you have that desire, you go there and you start and then you can start the program, even if you're not fully committed to it. But if you go there and you start and you say, okay, I'm gonna try this out, then you are associating with the better things.
Right. I mean, you can't get anywhere unless you start.
Right.
And that makes sense in everything. You got to start before you get anywhere.
I really messed that up saying a desire to drink.
That's all right. But also it is, and sometimes it's hard to believe, but it's something that comes to individuals. Thinking about not drinking is still thinking about drinking.
Right. It's still a mental obsession.
Well, there is quite possible for many people, basically, you to a point where you don't even think about not drinking.
Mm-hmm.
You just, it becomes something that's not part of our lives.
Right.
Because no matter where we go, if we just go to get bread at Kroger's, we're going to pass by wine and beer, and there's signs all over the place. But people can get to a state where this is just something that they don't even think about.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to think about, what the 12 steps has done for me, is to train my brain to say or to think, what could I do to help that person?
Mm-hmm.
What is the next right indicated thing for me to do? I'm thinking positive things. This is now, something that was not part of my life. When I was drinking, no matter how drunk I got or how happy I got getting high, somebody was always doing something wrong to me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get, even if I had a bunch, I wanted more. I wanted more money. I wanted more sex. I wanted more drugs. I wanted more. Being in recovery helps me understand I have exactly what I need.
Mm-hmm.
And very happy with that.
That's such a crazy shift of perception.
It is, but it's possible.
Yeah, it's possible.
But people have to take action.
It's also good when you go to your first meeting and they give you that book. It's got a list of all the locations, like local locations in Memphis at least, and then all the phone numbers. And at first, your thought is that these people don't want me to call them. They're being nice, because we've all been in those situations. But the maintenance part you're talking about. The steps is that you're helping other alcoholics. So the problem that you have is the problem that we have. We're just on a different side. Or is the problem that these other people are dealing with, and that by you reaching out, they're able to help, which helps them and you.
When somebody calls me, if I give a number to a newcomer and the newcomer calls me, he is actually helping me too.
Right, and that's hard for people to understand, but that's so true.
And it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. That's part of the maintenance part of the program.
I really appreciate you coming on. Is there any last things that you wanted to say?
Just that, certainly, if you think you may be an alcoholic, if you're not able to control your drinking, if you start off thinking you're going to have a couple of drinks and it's 6, 8, or 10 drinks, like that old country joke thing, some Foxworthy or something like that. You may be an alcoholic.
Yeah.
If whatever, you may. And that's okay. Don't be ashamed. If you think you may have trouble controlling your drinking, try to control it. If you're unable to, say, okay, I'll just have no more than 2 drinks a day, and you find that that's not happening, consider seeking treatment. There's so many in the Memphis area out there. They're all over the place. There's a lot of fine places to go. You don't have to go to a treatment center to go to AA. It's very common for people to do that, but that's not a requirement. If you have physical needs that need to be attended to, certainly hospitals or treatment centers to address the physical. If you are in the case of bad or concerning detox. But there is a solution. The solution is in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We learn about the big book by going to meetings, having a sponsor, and having friends. Because the fellowship is a good life. It's not a cult. It's a group of people all together for a common goal.
Yep.
And we do things that, it's not meeting. It's meeting people, having relationships, having fun, and helping others along. Because when I help somebody, that is helping me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true for each and single one of us. So I do hope people that have this disease that they did not cause, but if they're willing to drop their pride, be honest, and accept they have the disease, I certainly hope they join us. It'll be the best decision you've ever made.
Wonderful. All right, Rick. Thank you, Richard. Thank you so much for coming. I hope to talk to you again soon. We'll get you on again.
Nice
So thank
talking
you.
with you.
Thank you.